Alright, so you've probably heard the buzz. Alienware just dropped a monitor with a crazy, record-shattering 540 Hz refresh rate. But here's the billion-dollar question. Does a number that high actually give you an edge in a game? Or have we finally started making tech that's literally faster than our own eyes?
You know how it is in competitive gaming, right? We're talking about the absolute smallest of margins. The difference between a win and a loss can come down to a single frame. A split second is all it takes for someone to peek a corner, and that's where your reaction time and your gear make all the difference.
And that really brings us to the heart of the matter. Tech is pushing these boundaries that seemed like science fiction just a few years ago. So with this new 540 Hz monitor, we really have to ask, are we chasing a real, tangible benefit? Or has the technology finally started writing checks our own bodies can't cash? Okay, so let's meet the main event. This is the Alienware AW2526HL. It's the monitor making all this noise, and it's built for one thing, and one thing only: to be the fastest gaming display on Earth and give pro gamers that ultimate razor-thin edge.
So let's just run through the specs, the raw numbers, and on paper, they're insane. You've got a native 540 Hz refresh rate, a wild 0.5 millisecond response time, it's got G-Sync and FreeSync, but you might be looking at one of these specs and kind of scratching your head, especially for a monitor this expensive.
And yeah, that's the 1080p resolution. So why isn't a top-of-the-line monitor like this 1440p or even 4K? Well, it all comes down to a trade-off. Pushing 540 frames every single second is just a monumental amount of data. And right now, our current tech is basically redlining just to handle that speed at 1080p. It's a choice. You get the speed, but you have to sacrifice the pixels.
Okay, so the tech is impressive, no doubt. But this is where it gets really fascinating. Let's talk about the human side of things. Can our brains and our eyes actually keep up with this kind of speed? Let's get into the science.
And this is probably the most important idea to wrap your head around here. The difference between seeing something and feeling it. You probably can't consciously see the extra frames between 360 Hz and 540 Hz, but your brain can subconsciously process that extra information, which pros say translates to a feeling of smoother, more connected mouse movement.
Just look at this progression. It's kind of wild when you see it laid out like this. We went from 60 Hz, which had over 16 milliseconds of delay between frames, and just jumped and jumped and jumped, all the way down to just 1.85 milliseconds at 540 Hz. Every step was a huge leap forward for reaction time.
But here's the number that this whole debate really comes down to. That huge leap from the old pro standard of 360 Hz to this new 540 Hz frontier, it saves you just under 1 millisecond. Let that sink in. 0.93 milliseconds. Is that tiny slice of time really worth it?
And this chart shows what we're talking about perfectly. It's the law of diminishing returns in action. I mean, look, that jump from 60 to 144 Hz was a complete game changer. It cut out a massive 10 milliseconds of delay. But as we get faster, each jump gives us a smaller and smaller advantage. And this latest one, it's the tiniest improvement yet.
All right, so the science is a bit of a gray area. The theory is one thing, right? What happens when the rubber meets the road? Let's take this out of the lab and see what the people this thing was actually built for, the pro gamers, have to say about it.
And honestly, this quote from a player on FaZe Clan just says it all. You see it right there. He's saying, yeah, I can feel something. There's a difference. But right after that comes the big question. Is that something really worth a $650 price tag? That's the dilemma.
And get this. They actually ran a blind test where pros had no idea which monitor they were using. The results? Only 60% of them could correctly pick out the faster 540 Hz display. That means a full 40%, almost half of these elite-level players, couldn't reliably tell the difference. That is a very telling statistic.
So we've talked about the price of the monitor itself, but that's just the ticket to get in the door. There's a much, much bigger cost we have to talk about. To actually use a 540 Hz monitor, you need a PC that can consistently pump out 540 frames per second. And that, well, that requires an absolute monster of a rig.
And when I say monster, I mean it. We're talking about the absolute top of the line. You're going to need an RTX 4070 or better, a brand new i7 or Ryzen 7 processor, and at least 32 gigs of super-fast DDR5 RAM. Let's be real. For most people, this isn't just a monitor upgrade. It's a build a whole new computer upgrade. And here's something a lot of people forget. When you're pushing frame rates this high, it's not all about the GPU anymore.
Your CPU has to work overtime just to prep all those frames for your graphics card. If your processor can't keep up, it doesn't matter if you have the best GPU in the world. You're just not going to hit those numbers.
Okay, so let's bring it all home. We've looked at the tech, the human science, and the wallet-destroying cost. It's time to put it all together and figure out if this monitor is actually worth it. And more importantly, who on earth is it actually for?
When you put it up against the competition, the choice becomes pretty clear. For around the same price as the Alienware, you could grab a Samsung Odyssey that gives you a much sharper 1440p resolution, but you'd be stuck at 240 Hz. You're paying that premium for one thing and one thing only: bleeding-edge speed.
So let's just make this super simple. Who should buy this monitor? You should buy it if you are a professional gamer and your actual salary depends on having every single advantage, no matter how small. But for literally almost everyone else, especially if you already have a great 240 or 360 Hz monitor, or your PC isn't a spaceship, the math just doesn't add up.
And that leaves us with one last big question. I mean, this 540 Hz monitor is an incredible piece of engineering, for sure, but it also really feels like we're bumping right up against the ceiling of what's actually useful for humans. So what do you think? Is this the peak? Is this the end of the road for refresh rates? Or is this just the next step on an even crazier ladder?